Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show. And we are back. It is 2025, and we are back to review the Star Wars year that was 2024. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
And I am Jason Hondo Ling.
As I said, we are back to talk about Star Wars, and we're back to talk about Star Wars in 2024, which, when I set out the idea for this podcast, I didn't think it would be such a big episode, but when I started looking through actually the Star Wars we got in 2024, it was actually quite a lot. I don't know if you've thought about how much Star Wars we've had, Jason, and realised just how much we did get.
Yeah, I was starting to, and I was thinking, crikey, actually, we're going to be quite busy tonight.
We are indeed, so we'll get started straight away. So, our 2024 Star Wars year pretty much started in February, and it ran from February to the beginning of May, and that was The Bad Batch Season 3, the third and final season of Star Wars The Bad Batch. Obviously, Bad Batch has been fantastic, a spin-off from the Clone Wars. We had some questions left over from Season 2. Tech, was he alive? Was he dead? Was he going to come back in some way? We had some absolutely fantastic appearances like Ventress, Krennic, to name a few. Let's just talk us through sort of how I know you're a big fan of Star Wars animation and a big fan of the Bad Batch, Jason. So obviously, just how excited were you that we were getting the Bad Batch? How sad were you that maybe it was the third and final season? We knew that going in, and then just what were your thoughts and favourite parts of the Bad Batch finale?
Yeah, obviously, I was lucky enough to be there at the announcement of season 3 and everything that was going on with it, Celebration. And I can remember sitting there thinking, okay, I can understand why they're bringing it to a close, but also disappointed because I really had grown to love the series. Obviously, the Clone Wars was amazing. Rebels, I, I don't need to say anymore, and the other one I just won't talk about. But Bad Batch for me was a continuation of two series that I really loved. So I was excited to see how they were going to draw it to a close. And obviously, I wanted to know what had happened to these characters because obviously we don't hear anything because obviously they weren't created for the rest of the Star Wars. So I went in with a little bit of trepidation because I felt they were finishing it too soon. But I wasn't disappointed, and I really, really enjoyed this season. Um, I was I think I was quite vocal on here, and I stuck to my guns that I was really pleased that they didn't bring Tech back, and that we had a genuine loss there, because I feel at times there's genuine cop out where they keep bringing people back from the dead when not necessarily needed. But at the same time, we got the return of Ventress, who I was really pleased to see back from the dead. So a bit of a juxtaposition there. But obviously, yeah, knowing that Tech had gone, seeing how they coped with it. Obviously, in this season, the Bad Batch were even more um, separated from each other than they have been in the previous seasons. And obviously, we saw Omega growing even more. And when it led to the finale that it led to, I was pleased with what they'd done, and I felt they left it at a really good place. But I felt they'd also left it at a place where there was more to come. Obviously, we still haven't had any announcements other than the likes of Vision Season 3, that about any more animated stuff. So I'm I've got my fingers crossed that there's going to be an announcement at Celebration this year of a new animated series. I'd like to think maybe they're already quite deeply into it, because I do think that they would have been working on it pretty soon after the Bad Batch. So yeah, it sort of left me at a point where I no longer had an animated series to enjoy, um, but with the hope that there would be another animated series and with a group of characters that had really grown on me. And I recently rewatched some of the Rebels stuff and some of the Clone Wars stuff, and I think I'm going to head back towards Bad Batch very soon.
I think you spot on when you talk about, season 3, the third and final season, ended very nicely with sort of the face off on the bridge of Hunter and I've forgotten his name off the top of my head, Crosshair and Hemlock. And then
Yeah,
it led into sort of the fast forward and sort of Omega's future and that looking quite bright and looking like it was directed directly towards the rebellion, which is of course exactly what we want to see. Um, you mentioned there the sort of the only Star Wars animation that's been announced is Visions season 3. The good thing about Visions is that it's obviously made out of house, so Lucasfilm Animation don't make it. Obviously, they invite these other anime studios to come and work in the Star Wars sandpit, as they say, which means that Lucasfilm Animation is probably working hard on whatever that next project is now. Will it contain Omega? Will it not? Who knows, I suppose. But I tend to agree with you. I think Lucasfilm Animation will be working on something right now, and there's probably not a better place to announce it than Star Wars Celebration in Japan this year, as you said, Jason. So I fully agree with you there. Um, Tech sort of loomed over the series as sort of a weight of like that was you could feel the loss in the team. I thought, which was very powerful, and they used it very well as a story technique. Um, but we did end up getting Crosshair back with the team, who sort of he didn't fill Tech's shoes, but it helped us feel good about the team again. They lost Crosshair, so they lost the brother, and then they lost Tex, they lost another brother, but then they got Crosshair back and they reconciled that relationship, which I thought was quite powerful. Um, I loved obviously Ventress being there was really cool and done really well, especially when tied into the Force and does Omega have it, does she not type of thing. Um, and then of course I loved how we got a sprinkling of Orson Krennic, no dialogue, but he was there, which he would be talking about the future of the Empire at this stage in the Star Wars timeline. And of course we are getting Krennic back in Andor season 2, so we're going to get Krennic 2 years in a row, which is very very exciting. We pretty much steamrolled straight from that ran February to the very beginning of May. I think May the 1st might have been the last episode of Bad Batch season 3. And then on May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day, Tales of the Empire drops. It's full season of animated shorts. So Tales of the Empire is of course the spin-off sequel series to Tales of the Jedi, which was a fantastic series that focused on Count Dooku and Ahsoka, if I'm not mistaken. And this Tales of the Empire focus on Barriss Offee, so another Jedi sort of turned Inquisitor there, and Morgan Elsbeth, who was obviously very much involved in sort of the Mandoverse and what's going on there. Talk us through May the 4th. Obviously, we just finished a really powerful, heartfelt, and then a happy Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3. And then we get sort of Tales of the Empire straight away, punching us right in the face again, saying, we're Star Wars, we're not dead yet. Make sure you've got room for seconds. What was your thoughts on May the 4th release of Tales of the Empire?
yeah. Tales of the Empire for me, obviously Tales of the Jedi I loved previously, and Tales of the Empire certainly didn't disappoint. Um, the characters that we looked at obviously were slightly different in almost what you'd expect to have seen. They weren't, they'd been taught previously of lots of stuff like Mace Windu, Plung Plung, Ki-Adi-Mundi, all these different Jedi's could have been done for Tales of the Jedi. And then when we got Tales of the Empire, these two characters, Barriss Offee, obviously up until the point that we saw this, had very much been part of the Jedi Order, but we then saw her story and what had happened to her after her fall, so to speak. And seeing her then as an Inquisitor, we then got to see more of the Inquisitors, which is always great. That's part of the Star Wars story that over the last few years has grown. And it was also, but to see that as well, we also got her redemption arc, which was something that was kind of surprising, kind of not surprising, because she was this Jedi previously. So it was an interesting arc to see with the way they looked at the whole idea of the Inquisitors, the hunt for the Jedi, and then how this one Inquisitor, who obviously had a very, very distinct past with Vader, which was brilliantly alluded to in parts of these episodes. So seeing her arc was really, really satisfying and really well done. Then the whole thing with Morgan Elsbeth, she's a character that's sort of grown on me from her first appearance in The Mandalorian through to Ahsoka, where obviously we saw her demise, and now seeing a bit more of what she was about and where she had come from, and also the link, obviously, to the Night Sisters. So it was two very, very sort of different stories, but very, very well done. And obviously, they got to sprinkle in a bit of Thrawn there, which at the moment everyone loves a bit of Grand Admiral Thrawn. So getting him into it in a slightly younger guise, I think was always going to be popular. But again, seeing how she had gone from, this young Night Sister that then went on to being a big part of this new empire building sort of thing. So as a series, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, 3 episodes for each character. It's quite short, but it gave us just enough of what we needed to know. And obviously, then we also got appearances of characters that we already knew and loved. So as a whole, these, I hope they're going to do some more. There's rumours that there's going to be more, and I like the fact that they do sort of chuck them on us as a surprise in the way that they do. So again, from an animation point of view, um, last year we were pretty lucky, which is why I'm just hoping this year they've got something that they haven't told us about yet.
It's quite possible. I think for me, I love Barriss Offee's storyline. I thought, when we seen her in the Clone Wars, she was obviously very, questioning the Jedi, questioning the war, questioning everything, but not necessarily saying, yes, I'm a Sith and I believe in Palpatine. And I think, when she's presented with that choice in Tales of the Empire, and it's sort of the only choice you can take, really, it's a case of either stay in this prison cell and die, or come and be an Inquisitor. She goes and does it, but then, presented with the choices that she has to make and what she's expected to do as an Inquisitor, she realizes that's not for her. But I love how it wasn't just a case of, oh, well, I'll go back to being a Jedi when, she becomes a healer, it seems like. And, I think that's it's a role where you're trying to sort of give back and make up for the wrongs you've done, if that makes sense. Which I thought was a very powerful choice to do that. Like, not just to give her back a lightsaber and say, no, she's back to being a Jedi and fighting the good fight. It was like, no, actually, she's going to go and become she's going to turn back to the light side, but she's going to go and be a healer for people and help people. More than just being a warrior, if that makes sense. Which I thought was really cool. Morgan Elsbeth, I thought was really cool to dive into sort of the Night Sisters side of things, and the genocide of Dathomir was very cool to see from another point of view. I think seeing Thrawn and Rook was really cool as well, and sort of got to see Thrawn making those friendships and those alliances in his youth that he knows will pay dividends for him in the future. Now, I'm not saying he knows she will help me come back from sort of the unknown galaxy, because what's going to happen, I don't think he can see the future, but I think he knows that these are powerful and clever people, and I need to befriend them and have them in my, in my camp, so that if I do need them, they can come good and pull through. And obviously that's exactly what Morgan Elsbeth does. Obviously she's the one who helps Thrawn come back to the known galaxy at the end of Ahsoka, as we saw it. I think Tales of the Empire was a very cool spin-off from Tales of the Jedi, and I think we could still get more Tales of the Jedi, and we could still get more Tales of the Empire. We could get Tales of the Rebellion, we could get Tales of the First Order, we could get Tales of the New Republic, we could get Tales from Jabba's Palace, we could get Tales from Kashyyyk. They could literally go in any different direction with this series, and that's why I think it's really cool, and that's why I think they could always constantly be working on it, and that's why, I mean, we'll talk about it in next week's episode when we are reviewing what we're expecting from 2025, but, you know, nothing's been announced, but they could very well hit us with a series of animated shorts, hopefully, which will be very cool. Moving on from that, on May the 4th, and Tales of the Empire, we obviously had the 25th anniversary of Star Wars The Phantom Menace. So the movie had loads of merch come out, and the film also was back in theatres across the world. I know you didn't catch it in theatres. I watched it about 4 times, I think, in cinemas. Again, and absolutely loved getting to watch it back in the big screen. It did come with a sneak peek of The Acolyte before the movie, which was fantastic. But yeah, I think The Phantom Menace, in my opinion, it hasn't aged. Like, it still looks great. It sounds great. The score's still fantastic. That pod race on the big screen's still wonderful. It's a perfectly paced film, in my opinion. And yeah, it was just great to watch it back on the big screen. I don't know if I know you didn't say it, but what are your thoughts on us getting these anniversary movies back on in the big screen, a chance for fans to watch?
Yeah, any chance to get to see Star Wars in the cinema is going to be good, and I'm gutted that I didn't manage to. Life just was too busy for me to get there. But yeah, Phantom Menace for me, apart from obviously the special editions, like yourself, it would have been Pete. Phantom Menace was my first Star Wars cinema experience. You know, new Star Wars, seeing it for the first time on the big screen, all those years ago. It was amazing, and you know, to think 25 years on, it's just, uh, you know, what we've had since then. Because they made us wait quite a while to get to that. It's really good, and obviously, you know, there was a lot of controversies at the time. But I think over the years, the more people have looked at it, and with the more stuff that's come out of it, like the Clone Wars and all of this sort of stuff, the Phantom Menace has got a big part to play. And obviously, it was George Lucas's vision. You know, when you think now, um, the special effects, the stuff that they created to create those films, that obviously he'd waited all these years to be able to do that, and then to be able to now, 25 years later, revisit that in the cinema, is great. And it's great that the cinemas, you know, I know to begin with it was very much, you know, limited releases, but I think there was demand that a lot of the cinemas jumped to, and gave the audiences what they wanted, which is really good, and was really necessary. Um, you know, Phantom Menace for me, there's a lot of stuff that came out of it, you know, and since then, there's, I don't know if you read recently, but really good news come out of the story behind Jake Lloyd. It sounds like he's doing a lot better than he was, and you know that poor kid came under criticism, and this film was his star vehicle, his chance to shine. And because of some of the stuff, it obviously made it difficult for him. But it's good to hear he's doing well, and hopefully now he can look back 25 years later and see how much the audiences are enjoying that film that he was involved in. So it's a really great experience that the cinemas allowed the audiences the chance to do that, and for those that got to, I think it's great.
It absolutely is. And then before we talk about June and The Acolyte, seeing as what Star Wars re-released in theatres, definitely here in the UK we sort of got the full saga re-released, minus Solo. Solo was the only film that didn't get re-released, so sort of from August up until October. It seemed like there was sort of a new Star Wars on every week. So Phantom Menace was on, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. So I managed to watch them all except for The Rise of Skywalker. That came out when some horrors came out, and then my local cinema had it on sort of in the daytime when I was at work, where the other movies had been on in an evening or on a weekend when I could catch it. So I missed that one. That was the only one I missed, sadly. But great getting to watch all the Star Wars back on the big screen. Especially The Last Jedi is one I particularly love, that experience of watching that in the cinema. So I really, really enjoyed that. Taking us into June, we had The Acolyte, which was sort of a brand new Star Wars experience. You know, it was set 100 years before the Star Wars timeline we know. It was set in this High Republic era, which hadn't been seen on the big screen at all. It's obviously been mentioned in comics, books, audiobooks, novels, that type of thing. Acolyte comes out. It was a very, very expensive show, and we had a lot of it wasn't on the volume. It was filmed a lot sort of on location and in sets. Just take us through sort of your excitement for the Acolyte, and did you enjoy getting sort of a new Star Wars drama that was set in a time we didn't know?
Yeah, I think I've been quite vocal with this one again, and I still stand by that. There's bits of it that didn't hold up for me, but as a whole, by the end of the experience and looking back at the experience, I actually enjoyed it. I felt it had a place. I think a lot of the criticism um, wasn't necessarily deserved. Some of it was. Um, the but I've not watched it as many times. I was only thinking the other night I really ought to sit down and watch it all again. And it's quite an interesting one. I don't know if you noticed over Christmas there was a lot of people that were talking online about rewatching or watching for the first time The Acolyte. And there was a lot of people that were saying, I'll watch it in the order. I think it was 3, 7, and then in the order that it should have been, because they were picking out those flashback episodes. Um, but I think that does the Acolyte a disservice, because it was similar to, obviously, Star Wars was filmed out of sequence, but that, in hindsight, you watch it in sequence. But with the Acolyte, I think it was part of the storytelling, and I actually enjoyed that method of storytelling, that you were took back to see where these characters had come from and how they got to the point that you are now seeing them at. And just because it's a different way of storytelling, it shouldn't be brushed aside. And if the creative team wanted it to be done like that way, I think if you look at it and you watch it, especially for the first time, if you watch it in that sequence, that's the journey that they take you on. So I will defend them with that. I think it was a different way of storytelling, but I don't think it was an unnecessary way of storytelling. So no, I enjoyed. There was a lot of it that I enjoyed. There were some excellently choreographed sequences. There was some really cool characters. There was some really great acting. Um, some of the characters I'd have liked to have seen more of. Some I'd have liked to have seen less of. But overall, it was a, a show that I think wasn't done the justice that it deserved. I'm sad that it doesn't look like that we're going to get a second season, because I really think they put into place some really interesting story threads that I know they're probably going to pick up with comic books and novelizations, but it was designed to be shown as a TV series, and I think it deserved to be given that chance. I do get that, and there's a lot being said just recently about the cost of it, as you alluded to. Obviously, it was a very practically filmed series which cost a lot of money to do. So to carry on making it that way would be very, expensive for Disney. And as we know, the way the streaming is sort of going, they're struggling to keep creating the money for these series. So I get why the decision was made, but I'm also disappointed the decision was made. Um, but we got to see the first glimpse of Palladius, which I think is something everyone now wants to see where that was going to head to. And I hope they get a chance to, at least whether it's in comic books, in novelizations, bring that story through. But overall, for me, the Acolyte wasn't a disappointment. It maybe didn't live up to what I'd hoped it was going to live up to. There were bits that were very, very predictable in my mind, and that that disappointed me. But then again, I said the same about the Obi-Wan series. That some of that, because I love Star Wars and I read about it, there was bits in it that just were like, yeah, we expected that. Why couldn't you have given us something we didn't expect? But then that's the way it is. That they delivered a story. That was the main thing. So yeah, the Acolyte for me, it wasn't a disappointment. Which is the main thing. And I look forward to seeing what happens to it if it isn't going to be on the screen.
Yeah. I think so. It absolutely was, like, fact. It was review bombed on Rotten Tomatoes by the far right and by silly people. Um, its budget, so it didn't go over budget, right? It spent its budget. It just had a really high budget. So for me,
Yeah,
the budget was a Disney give them the budget. So
yeah,
part of me thinks that they set themselves up to fail because it was never going to. The budget was always going to be too much. I don't know where they were expecting to make revenue when something's available on streaming, and every Star Wars fan already has Disney Plus. So it's not going to generate any extra revenue, if that makes sense, in that regard. So, I think sadly, like, if you think about, like, the swagman, which is the term that they give the Star Wars social media team, they were bigging up the Acolyte and the Acolyte fans who were loving it. And the far right came in and sort of belittling these people, threatening them, review bombing everything, hate speech. And the swagman sort of just vanished, didn't protect any of the stars and didn't protect any of the fans that had been championing before, which I thought was poor form from Star Wars, to be fair, and from Lucasfilm and from Disney. Very poor form. And that's what makes
yeah,
me think that, yeah, it was expensive, so it was easy to say we're not doing a season 2. But I do feel part of it was we don't want to have to deal with review bombing. We don't want to have to deal with these far right people trolling everything. So I think it was both those reasons. Disney won't say it's both. Disney will just say it's the budget, but Disney signed off on the budget and they knew what they were getting into. It didn't run over. So they're either calling themselves morons or there's more to it. So I'll let you be the judge of that. I think for a series, I loved sort of the mystery aspect. Not only were we in a new Star Wars timeline, it was the earliest sort of I've seen Star Wars on screen in live action. But again, what you said there about the flashback episodes, not only was it sort of new, but also things were a mystery on top of that, with the flashbacks being told the way they were told, which I thought was really wonderful storytelling. It really did keep you guessing week to week, which I really did enjoy. I thought Manny Jacinto, who played the Stranger, was absolutely fantastic. We got to see Darth Plagueis, which was wonderful. Again, the fact that sort of, it's almost funny because the fans who were sort of review bombing it on Rotten Tomatoes and causing all the online harassment are probably the Darth Plagueis fanboys and didn't realize we were going to get him. And they've killed the chance of seeing him on screen in live action now. So it's sort of almost, though it's sad we won't get him, they've killed their own dream there by being so nasty. And maybe that's their karma, I suppose you could say. Moving on from Dune and the Acolyte, TV show wise, we have to wait till winter, December. We get Skeleton Crew. Obviously, Skeleton Crew is not finished. There's still 2 more episodes to go as we are speaking about it. Skeleton Crew again, I don't think it's necessarily doing huge numbers on, like, it's not loads of new subscribers on Disney Plus for Skeleton Crew. I'm not quite sure what its budget was, but I do know that the hate has sort of died off a little bit. I think it's maybe because the far right know they can't go against children so much, as they can sort of adults who are of colour or not heterosexual. What was your thoughts? Obviously, the hype going into December and Skeleton Crew, and sort of how excited are you sort of what we've got so far?
I think I've said quite often on this podcast, as it grew, I'll freely admit, to begin with, Skeleton Crew, I wasn't that interested. I think Disney and Lucasfilm actually did something very, very clever with this series that I think they sort of learned from other series is they kept their gobs shut for a long time. We knew it was coming. We knew little tidbits, but they didn't over egg what we were going to get. Which is again something that they did really well with The Mandalorian when it first came out. So I think when we went into this, we really didn't know what we were going to get. There was rumors, and I think since it's begun, this series really hasn't disappointed. I'm back at the stage now where I actually wake up early in the morning to get up and be able to watch it. And quite often, before I go to work on a Wednesday morning, I've actually watched the episodes twice before I've even left the house. So for me, it's really gripped me, and I'm really glad. I think we got some brilliant young actors that have really pulled together, created this really great um, group of characters. With Jude Law, before this, I liked him as an actor. With this, I really, really love him as an actor. I love that even now, although he's coming across as a real bad guy at the moment, I'm not convinced that he is. But it's just one of the series that I think it's given us enough surprises. It's given us enough extra bits that I've really enjoyed it. I have a feeling. I'm hoping we're going to get a second season of it. Obviously, we've got 2 more episodes to go. I think they've got stuff geared up. You know, I've, they've got 2 ways they can go. They can either gear it up for a second season, or it needs to be satisfactorily concluded pretty quickly. I think I know where it's heading, but I don't know whether that's necessarily going to complete the entire story, or it could just set up more stories to come. But overall, as it's going at the moment, I think this is one of the freshest and most enjoyable things. And it's going back to the fact that obviously Star Wars was created for families to enjoy, for young people. It was George Lucas wanted to go back to the old experience of the serial, of the adventures, and Skeleton Crew's delivering that, I think. And I think it's one of the first Star Wars in a while that, without even trying, has seamlessly delivered it. And I've been really impressed with it.
We will obviously be, once the last episode airs, the weekend after, we will be recording our deep dive review of the entire season of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I think for me, Star Wars Skeleton Crew comes as a nice surprise. I wasn't really. November was a very busy time for me, so I wasn't really dialed in as much as I would normally be for other Star Wars projects. So it came sort of like a breath of fresh air. So I've been enjoying catching it every week. Looking forward, we've got 2 episodes left, and I'm excited to watch those, see where it concludes, and then deep dive our thoughts on that review episode. I'm thinking maybe not a season 2. I'm thinking it's obviously set in the time of the Mandalorian, the Mandoverse as we call it, and I can see sort of it tying into future storylines to do with the Mando. Speaking of the Mando, obviously this year we got the announcement that The Mandalorian and Grogu will be coming to cinemas. It's a film. So essentially, Mandalorian Season 4 is going to be a movie called The Mandalorian and Grogu, directed by Dave Filoni with Jon Favreau producing. Again, sort of Skeleton Crew could tie into this movie as well as any future sort of series that may come. Just because we're getting this Mandalorian film doesn't not mean that we're getting another season later, I suppose. For me, the announcement of the Mandalorian Grogu made a lot of sense. You know, Bob Iger's back in charge at Disney. We know that streaming's sort of gone the way of cable almost already, where everyone's already subscribed. So you're pouring millions of dollars into budgets. You've already got my £7, however much it is every month. You know what I mean? So whether there's new Star Wars or not, so you're not actually making any more money when new Star Wars comes on, but you've spent it. So, you know, get COVID's done. The box office is starting to recover, and they're starting to, yes, there is a place for content on streaming. And I think the future is probably Star Wars animation is what's going to be on Disney Plus. I think with the odd live action series. I think, and I think we're going to push our live action back on the big screen because that's where you're going to make your most buzz and your most importantly your most dollars. What was your thoughts on the announcement of the Mandalorian and Grogu and Dave Filoni directing a movie for Star Wars?
Well, obviously, as everyone knows, I love The Mandalorian and Grogu. I've been a big fan of it since it started. And anyone that listens to this regularly will also know that, as far as I'm concerned, Dave Filoni is king. So for me, this is a really, really brilliant news and really exciting time. I can't wait to head to the cinema. And yep, this will probably be the first time I take Jess, my youngest, to see a Star Wars film because she's still Grogu mad. So I think I'll be able to get her to sit on her butt for long enough to watch it. So for me, it's really exciting. Um, there's loads of ways that this film could go. Obviously, the last season of um, The Mandalorian sort of really did. And I read an article on this the other day, and I said I really saw where they were coming from. It it had gone full circle for those characters, and it actually sort of finished their story. So therefore, in hindsight, this new film is the next part of their journey. So I'm really interested to see what Filoni and Favreau are going to do with that. I do think you're dead right. I think Bob Iger has took Disney in a very different sort of, um, or Disney and Lucasfilm in a very sort of different perspective because he's taken it more back to the movies, and I completely get where he's coming from. And going back to the Acolyte, I'm a strong believer that I completely agree with you with the fact that the funding was set by Disney. And I do think that was the management at the time cocked up. And I think, as you said, yeah, they were morons with that and also with the way that they managed the whole situation. And I think that's why now we're going to get more, like you say, more of the film sort of stuff, which is great for us as an audience. And the thing is, they create it for the cinema where people are going to go and see it, and people are going to still carry on with their streaming to be able to watch that over and over again. How many people these days? I know, obviously, I know you're going to shoot me down here, Pete, because I know you do like your DVDs and all the DVD extras. But there's a lot of people these days that as life gets smaller and they don't want all these DVDs and everything streaming where they've got the instant access to it. So as long as those films are then available on streaming afterwards, they're creating the content for future anyway. So they've got a win-win with the movies and the way it goes. And it's a storytelling, it's a quick storytelling way to get these stories out there. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Mandalorian Grogu. I personally think this is going to be their swan song. I think with the way Pedro Pascal's career's going and everything, this is going to be the last chance that he's going to do um, for that franchise. So I'd be interested to see what they do with it. Um, but it was a good announcement. You know, I think it was get which one of the Disney events where if you've managed to catch it online, there's some rather grainy footage that's leaked on the internet of what we can expect, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And also, we got the likes of Zeb reappearing, which, having not had him in the Ahsoka series, is really good news because I loved his little cameo in the Mandalorian series.
Do you think the Mando and Grogu film is going to tie into maybe not the whole movie, but we'll get a reference or maybe see the arrival of Grand Admiral Thrawn in the known galaxy, setting up our head to the Empire style storyline that's going to be coming?
Yeah, I definitely think the fact that obviously Filoni's the one that's marshalling this storyline, and obviously the way Ahsoka ended, it would fit perfectly for it to be part of that. And as we know that Dave Filoni then wanted to do, obviously we got a second season of Ahsoka, which is I think it's shooting at the moment. So that's gonna clearly carry on that story. So that would tie in nicely to the Mandalorian and Grogu, and let's face it, that would carry on perfectly with the Mandoverse, which Ahsoka is a big part of. So yeah, I think it's going to tie in. I think we probably will see Grand Admiral Thrawn, whether it will be a big part of the story or whether it will be the end of the story and lead us into the Ahsoka series is yet to be seen. Um, but as I always say, I trust in Filoni, and we will see what he's got up his sleeve along with John Favreau.
Other projects, again, animated, we got Young Jedi Adventures Season 2. So I've not really seen Young Jedi Adventures. I don't know if you have or if your children have, what their thoughts are. Obviously, Nubs is. I know who Nubs is, I think everyone does. But other than Nubs, I'm a bit out of the loop on Young Jedi Adventures.
Yeah, I did sit down and um, Jess obviously is a little bit too old for it, really. But we did sit and watch a few episodes, and it was enjoyable. Um, it's very much. It reminded me of the sort of animated stuff that we used to get on Disney Juniors almost. So like the Doc McStuffins sort of thing that my kids used to watch when they were younger. It was Star Wars, but it was educational. Everything. There was a moral to the story. Um, the bad guys were sort of pantomime villains almost. It was all very tongue in cheek, but it's a fun series for youngsters and a good way to introduce them to the world of Star Wars. And obviously, you've got a rather comical version of Yoda that pops up in amongst the series. Um, because obviously Yoda's always the one that's there to train the younglings. So it's something that I think, like we were saying earlier, the animated stuff is the way for streaming, and content of this sort of caliber, high quality but very simple, aimed at young children, just to get them into the idea of Star Wars and everything. Could be, I think we'll keep going for a while. And if it's not that, then they'll probably come up with a new younger audience thing. But no, all in all, I think that's quite a fun series. If you got a little bit of time and want to sit and just have a chuckle at something a little bit, a little less brain taxing, then definitely give it a look.
And then another Star Wars animation that we got was, of course, Star Wars Lego Rebuild the Galaxy, which I know was something you were very excited about. Jason, take it away with your thoughts on Lego Rebuild the Galaxy.
I love this. I loved the Freemaker series when it was on. And seeing this series just gave me a real good chuckle. I haven't watched it lately. I should have really rewatched it because it doesn't take long to watch. But obviously, we get Surfer Dude Luke, we get Darth Jar Jar, Dark Ray, um, what other, just real fun, fun tongue in cheek, which the Lego Star Wars films always do. Like we had in the past Ian Solo, because Han's name had been mis spelt. So all of that sort of tongue in cheek stuff is there. And obviously they're short, bite-sized episodes, really good fun things to watch. And out of it, they've obviously brought out some quite fun kits. So we've now got the Dark Millennium Falcon, which I haven't managed to acquire yet. It's on my I really want it, but it doesn't quite fit with what I collect at the moment. But I do like the idea of having the Darth Jar Jar figure, the Surfer Dude Luke, and those sort of things. So if I get the chance, if the money comes together, then yeah, I'll probably treat myself to one of those kits. But it was just a really fun series. I'm glad that they're still doing the Lego Star Wars stuff, and it can bring a bit of happiness to the fans.
It certainly can. We also got some really cool games this year. A couple of mobile games that also are on Switch, I believe, would be Star Wars Hunters. And then we also obviously got Star Wars Outlaws. So I've not played Outlaws. I know obviously me and Ian did an episode in the past. Obviously, he did play Outlaws. Did have some issues, I think, with some glitches, especially around stealth play, which I hear are out of the game now after some patchwork that was done. I don't know if you've seen much of Star Wars Outlaws and if how excited you are. It's essentially where sort of it was a new story set in the timeline between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and you sort of get to sort of work for all the different crime syndicates while following a main storyline as well.
Yeah, I keep thinking that I've got to have a proper look at these because I gaming isn't my sort of forte. Um, so I haven't really looked at them. I know I've heard differing stories. I know some of the guys that I talk to from Star Wars groups have been really impressed with it. Some not so impressed. I think what it did give is it was a chance for people to sort of explore what they already knew of the universe, but to actually get this sort of playable game in universe. And they like to go around picking out all the Easter eggs and stuff. So yeah, it's one of the things that sort of hasn't grabbed me yet, but I keep thinking I really ought to have a go at it.
The only thing holding me back was that was next gen only, so it's like PlayStation 5. For me, I'm a PlayStation guy, so it'll be PlayStation 5, where I have a PlayStation 4. So that's why I don't have it.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking to maybe get a PlayStation 5 soon, and when I do, I'll buy the game straight away. Um, but that was literally the only thing holding me back was just the next gen of it, and I'd have to spend on a new console to be able to play it, which at the time I just didn't have the money to do. Another game that was launched in 2024 was a card game, a brand new Star Wars card game. There's been plenty of Star Wars card games throughout time. I don't think any of them have really stuck too well, but this one seems to lend more into sort of Magic the Gathering and Pokemon trading card game, it seems like. And it seems like there's been a lot of buzz. So if they keep going, then it should hopefully have a long time being played. That is Star Wars Unlimited, the new trading card game. Jason, I know you've played probably. I've played a little bit. I know you've played probably a little bit more than me. So just take it away on your thoughts of first getting the card game and then just why you enjoy it and why you continue to play and sort of invest in the new sets. I think we've had 3 expansions. Is that correct now?
Yeah, we've recently had the announcement of the fourth expansion coming later on this year or early part of this year. Yeah, Star Wars Unlimited has gripped me. It was a big part of my Christmas list. I've got some deck boxes over Christmas. I spent time going through the cards that I've got, um, cataloging them, being really, really geeky. I'm still learning, but through Jedi Archives, who sort of introduced me to this, obviously I heard about it when we were at Celebration, and then when it came out, I was down Jedi Archives. They gave me a starter pack to look at, um, and then I got invited. I went down for one of the pre-releases. The last pre-release, sadly, I was unwell, so couldn't go down for, but I did get me pre-release set. And I've got all of the sets all sorted out now. But this is a really good game, really fun, really good to get into collecting. The artwork's really spot on. Um, the playability is quite simple. So it's something that you can pick up on. I'm actually due Saturday. I'm going to go round a friends with the decks I've got, and we're going to have a few games and hopefully practice a bit more. The deck building whole concept is sort of growing on me. I've now got Jess has started collecting Pokemon, so I'm learning about Pokemon now as well. And I've also started Lila on Lorcana, which is the Disney sort of deck building sets that they've got out. So we sort of turned it into a family thing. And that's something that I discovered locally to me. There's a Saturday club set up at one of the social clubs where families just literally turn up with all their different games, and Star Wars Unlimited is a big part of that. And they all get together and play the different games that are going. So it's something, it's reasonably priced to get into it, although it's costing me a bomb because I'm getting into it a little bit too much. But for me, it's something that I think is going to grow. They certainly seem to have a very clear plan of how it's going. Um, there's there were issues early on with distribution. Is still There are still issues with getting hold of the sets, um, but they are becoming more and more available, and I think they've realised that it's something that has the potential to hang around. And as Star Wars grows, so do these sets. So, yeah, it's a really fun thing to get involved in. Quite simple, easy to sit down if you got a couple of decks, and you can teach a friend over a couple of beers. It's a good chance. And yeah, the also online. I've Over the Christmas I was playing around with it. Really good website set up where you can go on. I've set up cataloging all the cards that I've got, so you can see what you've got, what you haven't got. You can build the decks online so without having to purchase them, but you can work out what cards you want to get and set everything up, go through it. And there's a lot of communities online as well for playing the games, and learning how to play it. So, yeah, if you like your Star Wars and you want something to get into and collecting, it's a really fun way of doing it. I was lucky enough as well when I went Christmas shopping. I popped to get some of the Lorcana stuff at another comic book shop, locally to me, Atomic Comics, and they they have embraced Unlimited, similar to Jedi Archives, and kindly gave me a small pack that they give out to regular players of it. And when I got home, I opened the little pack, and there was just three of the cards in there, but all three of them were the more rarer of the cards. I got some really nice ones just as a nice gift there from the shops. And that's something that I'm sort of finding as well. Is it's a good way of making new Star Wars friends and getting involved with like-minded people and socializing a little bit.
What's some of your favourite cards that you've got so far?
I've got. I was really pleased very early on that I got a Hondo. I am looking out for getting what they call the showcase Hondo, or one of the more rarer ones. I've just got the standard Hondo at the moment. Cad Bane, I was really pleased with, and I got a really nice showcase, Quinlan Voss, which I was really pleased with. So I'm going to try and build a Quinlan Voss deck as well. So yeah, I've got some really nice. I've got a good mix of. I was surprised with the leaders, the different leaders. There's some that I've got quite a few duplicates of, but I've also got a real fun mix of characters to build the decks with. So I'm looking forward to going online and plotting and building different variants of different decks.
Awesome stuff. And any other awesome Star Wars merchandise that you've purchased in 2024? What were your highlights?
Uh, it was a it was a bit of a rare one with me that I sort of money I think were like with all of us held us back. I was really pleased that I managed to get the Lego Ghost and Phantom set from Ahsoka, which obviously I wanted to get to go alongside the original Ghost and Phantom that I already had. That was a really fun build that I did just before Christmas. So yeah, that was something. Um, Sadly, I'm finding the Lego building a little bit more difficult since the arthritis has set in. So it's something that's sort of gone to the sideways. But Lego, they brought out some really good kits last year. This year has already started. There's about 4 kits that were released January the 1st that I already want. Um, I think we got Ahsoka Star Fighter. We've got trying to think of what sets they are now, but there's so many different ones. One that I definitely want to get is the Battle on Peridia set that came out last year. That for me, because obviously, again, it would mean getting the next version of the Admiral Thrawn minifigure, which I've already got, but it's also got Morgan Elspeth, and a really nice Ahsoka figure with it. So, and Ahsoka is another character that I do collect the majority of the minifigures, so I'd hope to get that at some point. But overall, Lego brought out some really cool stuff. There was Jess got into the Bitty Pops with the Star Wars stuff, which was a great way for her to build a Funko collection, but on a smaller scale, and at quite an affordable range. So yeah, she got those. That was part of her Christmas present. She got the great Death Star display stand that they produced for the Bitty Pops. And they also brought out a Harry Potter one as well, which was set up for Lilas. Funko, yeah, they brought out obviously the usual plethora of Star Wars stuff, and obviously there was a lot of Hasbro stuff that I looked at. I really, I really keep looking at the Moff Gideon helmet. That's very tempting. If a good deal comes on that, I might bite. But yeah, there was so much stuff that I could have bought but didn't get a chance to. And I know, obviously, I'm hoping you're going to mention a certain delivery that you had at the end of December that I know a lot of other Star Wars fans received. That was a big part of 2024.
Yeah, so I think the original purchase was 2023. I think so. In 2023, I
Yeah,
think you could buy you could back the Ghost. So essentially, Hasbro and HasLab over at Hasbro Pulse sort of had the idea to do the vintage collection, the Ghost. So it's in scale. It's the biggest Star Wars ship they've ever done. 3/4 inch figures in the vintage collection line by Hasbro. It was backed and reached all of its stretch goals, and it finally shipped this December, so it's arrived. So mine's still in the box. I haven't unboxed it yet because the box is huge. But my first HasLab that I backed, and well, not I backed the Rancor, but obviously the Rancor didn't make enough to get made, so I didn't get it. But plenty of conversations being had about that. But yeah, so the Ghost is huge. The box is huge. I haven't opened it yet. But yeah, it's really cool to have that have arrived. And where I work, we're always busy, to be fair, but we're particularly busy over the winter period. So I have no chance to sort of, it's quite a big box, and it's going to take, I want my full attention when I do open it. So I sort of want to be rested from work when I do, so I can enjoy it more. But yeah, very excited to have gotten the Ghost. Well, that purchase for me really would be, I finally got my Phantom Menace TC14 for like a really good price from the Echo Base Trading Group. So I was very pleased to receive him. Is there anything from
awesome.
2024 Star Wars wise that we've not mentioned, Jason?
Yeah, for me, there's a big bit that for me was really big, and I was really pleased to be able to do it. And that was Dorchester Strikes Back. For me, that was a big part of 2024. Anyone who listens knows how much I love Star Wars conventions, and want to attend more and more of them. And it had always been my dream to host a Star Wars event in Dorset, and that came to fruition August of 2024, when, with the help of Ben and Jamie and the rest of the guys down at Jedi Archives in Dorchester, the support of Brewery Square, and lots of other people, and then a big support from the UK Garrison and the Mando Mercs. We put on an event that it just blew my mind, really. It was, I think I worked it out, it was 8 hours of me waffling on stage, with Steve from Jedi News, who again I've got to give a big thanks to because he travelled down from Wolverhampton, um, firstly just to support me because we'd done a similar event up in Dudley years ago, but he ended up being on stage and being a big part of hosting it with me. And it was an event that, brought out a lot of Star Wars fans. We had loads of people. I think we clicked it up. We think over the day, there was about 800 people turned up. And, they they got involved with competitions, cosplaying. But for me, I think seeing the kids, and there was a lot of young families there with, they brought the kids dressed up in Star Wars outfits, and they had their plastic lightsabers, and they were fighting it out in the square and just enjoying it. And obviously, I got to thank Jez, the running stormtrooper, who kindly came down, gave up his time, and got up on stage with us and did a bit of a live podcast there in Dorchester. So that was a dream come true for me. And we're plotting to do it all again this year. Hopefully a lot bigger and a lot more louder. So we've got that coming up, and hopefully, I'm hoping that next week when we do our Star Wars for 2025, I might be able to let a few things out of what Hondo's got planned for this year. But there's something to tune in for.
Fantastic stuff. I think that brings an end to the episode. So thank you very much for listening. This was our retrospective look back at a year in Star Wars fandom. The year was 2024. On next episode, we will be talking about what 2025 looks like, what's being announced, what we're excited about, what we think could happen, upcoming events, all of the good stuff. And then the episode after that, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, will finally be finished, and we will be doing our deep dive review on Star Wars Skeleton Crew. But as we come to an end, Jason, where can the people find you on social media?
As usual, at Hondo Ling.
You can find myself on Instagram or on Twitter, now known as X, at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can find the podcast on X at Boars Star. You can also find the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Star Wars Podcast. Please check us out. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review and a lovely little sentence. It keeps us smiling all day, and it helps people find the show. Only takes you a few moments. And again, if you're listening on any of the other wonderful podcast applications out there that has a feature to leave a review, just leave us a top review. All of the stars, a lovely sentence again, keeps us smiling for a long time. Only takes you a few moments, and it does help us get new listeners for the show. But that brings an end to an episode. May the force be with you all, and remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.